writing and see if he made some of the same choices that you're making.
So, is it okay to change the inversion of the chord?
Everything's root position in this chapter.
Okay.
That's another good question. Yeah, no inverted chords. Maybe after you get 2 or 3 measures done, look in the back and compare it to the choices that the author made. Let's see how you do. You guys have missed this. I know you have.
Sure.
Alicia.
Of course.
Yeah, we're going to zoom in on Mitch here. Let's see how old Mitch is doing.
Mitch hasn't gotten anywhere. Mitch is looking at this, and it's G.
G and a G. That means you're missing a B and a D.
Okay.
So you have to decide, do I want to give that B to the alto or do I want to give it to the tenor? It's just a simple decision. You just stick it one place or the other and then fill in the missing note. And
Okay, well, if I give it to the alto, then what happens to the tenor?
you give him the other note. Because you have 2 G's,
duh.
then a B and a D.
I get it.
Oh, I haven't. There it is. So if I make you an E. So wait, Chief.
I will say this, on the first measure, if you give the alto the low B and the tenor the high D, you have crossed the voices. Because you've taken the tenor above the alto.
Right.
So you're right. In measure 1, you have no choice.
Right.
You have only one place you can put each note.
So in
Oh, and
measure
can't
2,
violate
Yes.
spaces.
we can't have the altos go up to the A because the sopranos were just on the A, correct?
No, you can go to the same note. You just can't go any higher than they were.
Okay.
Alto
okay.
could sing A in measure
Okay.
2.
I
Yes.
can't put
We
the
have
D
to
on
check
the
the space.
bottom one, because that would just be
Like what's
parallel.
on
Is
the
that
close
okay?
part.
No, that wouldn't be parallel. That would be static.
Yeah.
Oh,
Going from
okay.
D to D is not moving anywhere.
Okay.
That's static. But see, you're asking yourselves the right kind of questions.
So she.
You got to ask when you do part writing. You're like, is this allowed? Look at the movement of the voices. Did I cross any voices? Yes.
So on the second problem, I had my alto go up to the A, and then I still needed an F to fill out the chord, but I couldn't bring the tenor down to the F.
You
because
could
that's-
take tenor up to high F because that's still in the
that's
tenor
true,
range.
That's true.
Remember, tenor's high note is G. So tenor could sing the one on top of 2 ledger lines.
That's true. Okay. Yeah. And then on the fourth example, what do
Yeah.
you do with the bass there? Because they're missing the.
A tenor note, you could double the, well,
Can I?
you could triple the,
E,
yeah, bass could sing E.
and then
Oh wait,
the
but
alto
wouldn't that be an
and then
inversion?
No, because the stem's going down. The root of that chord is
Oh,
C.
they gave us the bass note.
They already gave you the bass
Oh,
note.
hello,
That's
hello.
bass.
Use my eyes. Got it.
Yep.
No comments, Sam.
But I like it that you're wrestling through some of the philosophical decisions you have to make when you do your part writing.
Oh, don't
It's not as easy as just slapping notes down. You got to kind of think it through
I don't like that.
and don't be afraid to erase stuff. Don't be proud of your work and say, I'm leaving it. You got to ask all these questions. Yes.
So I've got a C and a G. Can I repeat those C and G and it's not parallel, right? Because they're not moving.
Right.
Okay, good.
The same note to the same note is not anything. It's static.
Good.
All right. I suggest we move on. There's one more topic I want to cover, and then we're going to call it good for the abbreviated class that we're going to have for today. So maybe after we're done this little class session, you could go back to the answer key and check your part rating and just see, wow, I made the same choice as the author made, or whatever. Sound good, Mitch?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, turn to page 83. The first topic today was, I'm going to give this back to you.
Do you want me to hold it?
I can get it unless you want to.
No.
Okay.
Okay, the first topic was when roots stay the same. It's probably the safest way to part right if you're just moving from the C major chord to C major chord. Now we're going to go, though, to the most common way roots move, and that is a fourth apart or a fifth apart. So if you look at example 6-2, and just look at the bass note, okay? The root is a fifth apart. You go from the dominant note down to the tonic note. Same thing in measure B. You go from an F to a C. The roots are a fifth apart. When roots are either a fourth or a fifth apart, the author has provided 3 helpful methods for part writing. We're going to have to learn those 3 methods. In fact, you're going to have to know them so well that, let's see if I can show you where this is going to come. I'm going to kind of jump to the chase here. Oh yeah, if you look at 85, you're going to do some part writing with roots a fourth and fifth apart, and up top there's a little blank. In that little blank, he's going to ask you which of the 3 methods you used to get from the first chord to the second chord.
Yes.
All right, so it's not like any one method is the best. It's just you're going to have to kind of try them as you go and see which one will work. Sometimes there's multiple right answers here. So let's talk about the 3 methods for writing when roots are a fourth or a fifth apart. These you need to know really well. So here we go. Method 1. I got to find it in my book here. Okay, method 1. Establish a common tone. Remember at the beginning of this recording, I asked you what C major and E major had in common. They had 2 common tones. Well, these chords, a fourth or fifth apart, are going to have 1 common tone. So if you look in example 6-2, all right, a G major chord and a C major chord have 1 tone in common. What is it? G, B, D, and C, E, G. Which note did I say twice? G.
Oh.
So try to keep the G, here's what he's saying about common tone. Try to keep the G in the same voice with both chords. Notice, remember, when nothing moves, there's no parallelism, and that's a safe way to part right. So he's given the alto a G, and he kept the G in the alto in the second chord. That's what he's saying about establish a common tone. All right? So, establish a common tone, that's the first thing, and move the other voices in stepwise motion. If you can, move them contrary to the bass. So let's look and see if he did that in the first measure. He moved his tenor stepwise up in a contrary direction to the bass.
Nice.
Right? Remember, parallel movement is never good. If you can avoid it, that's great. So move the voices contrary to the bass. The other one, the soprano note moves contrary to the bass, also up by step. Notice the soprano note was a B. How come that voice had to go up?
Leading tone.
It's a leading tone. So yeah, it makes sense that one's got to go up. And then in letter B, he kept the common tone now in the tenor. Both the 4 chord and the 1 chord in C major have an F or a C in them. So he took that C and he put it in the tenor and kept the common tone there. He took the other voices and moved them downhill, contrary to the bass that was going uphill. Okay? So that's method 1. Method 1 is a common tone and the other voices moving stepwise contrary to the bass. Method 2 involves moving all 3 upper parts in the same direction. This is my least favorite movement. I don't like it when voices all move in the same direction, but it can work here when roots are fourth or fifth apart. Move the upper 3 parts in the same direction and nobody leaping larger than a third. Okay, so that's method 2. He gives you a couple examples of that on page 84. You can see the 1 chord going to the 4 chord, and he takes all 3 voices and moves them downhill. Nobody leaping larger than a third. There is a little interesting situation here. Look at the top of 84, measure C. He has a question mark there, next to the B natural. Here you are trying to obey the author and write method 2. I'm going to ask you to do these, by the way. I'm going to say, Solve this problem using method 2. All right. Well, there's a leading tone in the tenor, but you're trying to move everybody downhill contrary to the bass. So what he's done is frustrated the leading tone. Do you see how the leading tone jumps down to G?
Dun dun dun.
Okay, back to our discussion we had a week or two ago in class. If you're going to transgress by frustrating a leading tone, the best place to do it is where?
To the 5th.
Well, what voice?
In the
Not
tenor.
the soprano.
In the tenor.
In the tenor or the alto. So if you're going to frustrate the natural tendency of the leading tone, the place to do it is in an inside voice. So there, he's writing method 2. All 3 voices are coming down. And he gets away with frustrating the leading tone. You would not lose a point by doing that. You would lose a point if you doubled the leading tone. But here, he doesn't take the B up to C like we normally would. Okay? All right. We're going to review these in just a moment, so try to learn them the best you can. Mitch, why don't you hand the camera to Alicia so you can get your head in the book a little more.
Yay. Thank you.
All right, so we just talked about method 1 and method 2. Now let's go to method 3, which is a little bit complicated. Method 3 involves a common tone. Okay, great. We already know what that is.
Whoa.
So he's going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord in the first measure of his example there, and he keeps a common tone. I'm in example 6-4.
That's fine.
All right? So that's part of method 3. The next part is a little bit tricky. You find the 3rd in the chord, and you leap to the 3rd of the next chord in the same voice.
What?
So, yeah, see the 1 chord there? The 3rd's in the soprano. He leaps up to the A in the next chord. That's the 3rd of the F major chord. That's called a tertian. Tertian is a fancy word that means 3 of something.
Yes.
So it's a tertian leap. You're leaping from the 3rd to the 3rd. So you got to keep that leap in the same voice. All right? So if you look at letter B, he's done the same thing. The chord is spelled C-E-G. And there the E is the 3rd. He leaps down to the 3rd of the 5 chord, down to the B. All right? And then we have the same ethical dilemma once again in the 3rd example. Because the 3rd now is the leading tone in the 5 chord. Leading tones don't leap, they step, right? Well, not if you're trying to write method 3. Okay? So he goes from the 3rd of the first chord to the 3rd of the next chord, but it involves a leading tone. All right, if we're going to transgress, where do we do that with the leading tone?
Tenor or alto.
In the inside voices. So he leaps from the B natural to the E. He hides that frustration of the leading tone in the inside voice. So, that's method 1, 2, and 3. I think the best thing for you guys to do is, we'll just do 2 measures of these. Do measure on page 85. Do measure 1 and measure 2. And try one of the methods, like predetermined. All right, I'm going to try method 1 on this first example and see if I can make it work. See if you can find a common tone. If you can, keep it in the same voice, and then move the other 2 voices. Now, you're not going to be able to move them contrary to the bass, because he's already moved the soprano uphill. So he's kind of set a bad example for you. I wouldn't hang out with Kotska. He's shady. But do the best you can to do one of the methods, and when you've completed a method, put the method you chose up in the blank at the top. And we're always going to have different answers here. As I survey the class, people are going to choose different methods and make them work. So I would just say do the first 2 measures of choosing methods, and that is probably how we're going to wrap up our class for today. So I'm not going to assign any homework. Obviously, over the rest of spring break, I'm probably going to work all over this assignment or this lesson again when we're all back together on Monday. It will be right after Madrigal Chapel. We're all going to be beat, and that's fine. We'll just kind of go over this again, but at least you'll have a head start at it by working ahead through those first 2 problems on page 85. So, everybody tell the class later. And we're going to sign off from the Madrigal Bus Harmony class.
I love you guys. Miss you.
We're up in
Bye from
Quakertown,
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. and having a great time on tour. Thank you for your prayers. We'll see you Monday.
Bye, guys.
Bye.